All right.
All right, what do you think? Do you think we should get started?
It's up to
Sure.
you. If we still
Yeah,
got
they'll
people
just keep coming on. So I think it's good.
And the doorbell will keep going off because the setting is not is not set, but that's okay. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Jen Thomas, and I am pleased to introduce Michael Chifolo, MSW. He's the LGBTQ plus program specialist at the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. He's responsible for helping to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for Boulder County's LGBTQ plus older adults. He does this through coordination of Project Visibility, Rainbow Elders, and Rainbow Connections. Michael earned both a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a Master's in Social Work from University of Southern California in LA. He's worked in domestic violence prevention in California and post-adoption services in Alabama and social work education in Colorado. Michael and his partner live with their cat in Arvada, and we are really lucky to have him here today for this training.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You know, again, it's kind of awkward listening to, you know, an introduction about yourself. You're obviously, you know, proud of your accomplishments, but then, you know, again, listening to your accomplishments. So anyway, enough about that. I'm so excited to be here with you all and so glad that we have a screen full of people here. 12 of us all together here so far. If others are joining in, they can just join in as they come along. As Jen said, my name is Michael Chifolo. I use the pronouns he, him, his, and I'm the LGBTQ plus program specialist of the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. And I'll explain to you a lot more about who we are and what we do. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my slides. And so share my screen here. And I always make sure I say all the things out loud so I don't forget any of the additional steps that you have to take. So bear with me there. All right. So here we go. Everyone see Project Visibility, creating inclusive communities for LGBTQ plus older adults. So that is what we're going to spend the next hour and a half or so together talking about how we can create inclusive communities for LGBTQ plus older adults. So in terms of how the day is going to work, our time together, our next hour and a half, our community agreements here, how we're going to proceed. We've got this new virtual world, and so we have some different options of how we can interact. You can ask questions in the chat. My folks that are here as coordinators can help me monitor that. But even better than that, if you feel comfortable just raising your hand or just unmuting and asking your question, that would be great. I totally encourage that. So this, I want to be an interactive space. And so folks feel free to ask your questions while we're going through. Traditionally, you want to mute when you're not speaking, just so we're not picking up any of the additional things that are going on in your space. Camera is your choice, but I do appreciate seeing your faces. So please at least show yourself when you are speaking. And let's see, assume best intent. As I mentioned before, we want to create a space for us to learn, and that includes making mistakes. And so again, we want to allow ourselves that ability to learn and to make those mistakes. We also want to respect confidentiality. So you hear some different things that are referred to: share the plot, not the players. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Of course, you're totally free to go share with everyone everything that I say, but just in case something is shared here in this space, we want to keep confidentiality as well. And so to get us thinking about this topic, we are going to watch a video about culturally competent care for LGBTQ plus older adults. It's all about respect. And this is put out by the Center for Consumer Engagement in Health Innovation and SAGE. SAGE is a great organization, a national organization that is that targets support and advocacy for LGBTQ plus older adults. We do a lot of the same work as SAGE does, although we're not a SAGE affiliate. We are definitely in collaboration and partnership with them. So I am going to stop the share here so that I can pull up the video. And look at that, we've got we got 19 people now. Thanks for whoever turned off the doorbell. I think that's probably helpful for us not to have to hear that.
I finally figured it out. Sorry about that.
Great. No, it's wonderful. I mean, it's nice to so you don't miss that people are on their way in, but a little distracting if there's a lot of people coming in, you know. All righty, so I'm going to share my screen again, and since I'm showing a video, I got to make sure I check these boxes here. All right, so here we go.
We want to make sure that the care that we're providing people in a healthcare setting is culturally competent, that we're attuned to who they are. There's a difference between race and ethnicity, geography, linguistic experience, life experience.
It's important that a doctor understand where you're coming from and not be judgmental.
Because who I am affects my health. And if you don't know me, then you don't know the information that I need.
It's an important part for anybody to feel comfortable and to know that this doctor is for you.
And if there's any doctor that has a tough time with who I am, my likes, dislikes, adios, I'm not going to come back.
Well, I had a story of an older lesbian. For years and years, her doctor, he would write her a prescription for birth control, and that doctor didn't really know her. She didn't feel comfortable and safe coming out to him. And had they actually had a more open conversation, he would have understood who she was, how she was living her life, and how to direct the healthcare so that it's a little more attuned to what she needs.
Being in the closet is not a good place to be in the health field because you are leaving out a lot of the important services that you need to have in order to have a quality of life.
For today's older LGBT folks, although they're living in a world now that is much more open and accepting than they ever imagined they would experience, they still had decades of experiences where there was distrust, discrimination, hostility. For many of those people, being invisible really was the smartest way to get through your life.
Having the facility trained, it really has changed the culture. Although I didn't think we were unfriendly before, people are much more open and excited to participate in activities that include everybody.
I think it helps people to just be attuned to other folks, to not make all those assumptions that we make.
We tend to think of elderly people as sexless or not interested in sex anymore.
I've never had a physician ask me about my sexual activity. And if a physician don't ask those kinds of questions, people will never get the services that they need.
The training is helping us to be more aware of how to ask these questions of our elders, how to discuss them around the team.
That aspect of training has had a huge impact on people, as well as components around language. Using words like transgender, what does that mean? Cisgender, what does that mean? Bisexual, what does that mean?
And for me, because I wasn't too familiar with it, I feel that it's my responsibility to learn as much as I can so I could take care of them the best I could and educate my coworkers, my friends, and talk to them about what I know.
One of the things that we hear over and over again is providers saying, well, it doesn't matter to me, I'm not going to do anything different. But what we hear from older adults is it means the world to them to be known, to not have to be censoring themselves, to not have to worry about, oh, I'm going to say the wrong thing, I'm going to reveal this, and they're going to treat me harshly.
The training that SAGE has given to the doctors has helped a lot. It's made a difference in the lives of many people, and it's made it easier for people to get up and go to see a doctor when they're not feeling well, and they can feel confident that they'll be treated with respect, and that's the main thing, is respect.
I'm going to go ahead and stop that share and bring us back to the group. The theme of respect is something that you're going to hear throughout today's presentation. In fact, my partner often jokes with me and he says, your whole job can be summarized basically in that you're helping people to be nice and encouraging people to be kind. And I'll take that as a main objective as my job, because I do think that that's primarily a lot of in terms of appreciating diversity and difference really comes down to that, we may not understand everything, but I think it's really important for us to try to be as kind and as nice and as respectful as we can. And so why this is important is because, and I'm going to go back to the slide so I can share some sobering statistics. Sorry, just a minor technical difficulty there. It seems I forgot how to do what I was doing. Okay. So again, going along with the theme that was presented in the video and really illustrating these sobering statistics on why it's important for us to do training like what we do and for SAGE to do what they do, is that 34% of all LGBT plus older adults fear having to recloset themselves when seeking senior housing. So that's 1/3 of people, 1 out of 3, that really feel like they have to, go back into the closet. 48%. Nearly 1/2 of all LGBTQ plus couples experience adverse treatment when seeking senior housing. So that's one of the reasons why folks feel like they have to go back into the closet. You will hear some stories from couples who will pretend that they are different relations when they go to seek treatment. So a same-sex lesbian couple may present as sisters or as cousins so that they don't have to endure this, which is a really sad story to hear. About 20% of all LGBT plus people avoid medical care out of fear of discrimination. So 1 out of 5 people completely avoid medical care. Nearly 1/3 of all transgender people do not have a primary care doctor and report poor general health. All LGBTQ folks, but especially our trans and non-binary folks, definitely have had experiences that have been negative. And as we see from the next one, 21% of all transgender people report that a doctor or other healthcare provider used harsh or abusive language while treating them. So again, 1/5. So 1 out of 5 people who do actually seek out medical care then come into contact with people who use harsh or abusive language. And so that's really challenging for folks in terms of, creating inclusive care. I'm going to jump in a little bit to tell you about who we are now that we've kind of set the context about why it's important for what we're doing, and to tell you a little bit about the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. So we call ourselves the AAA for short. And no, we're not the AAA that provides the road service or auto insurance. We are the Area Agency on Aging. And so there are 16 area agencies on aging throughout the state of Colorado, and we serve Boulder County. And so our mission is to deliver, fund, and advocate for services that promote well-being, independence, and dignity for older adults, people with disabilities, family caregivers, and veterans in Boulder County. So as you can see from our mission statement, we cover a lot of area. And so in order to do that, we are broken up into different teams. And so our healthy aging team focuses on wellness and nutrition and Medicare counseling. Our community living team operates the AAA resource line, which is the best way for people to get into getting any of our services. We have resource specialists that are service case managers, and we have those for specific areas like the mountains. We have a whole caregiving initiative team that helps support our caregivers in the community. Our elder rights team houses our long-term care ombudsman program, which are advocates that are provided or assigned rather to every assisted living and long-term care community nursing home in the county. And so they are there for resident advocacy specifically. We have a respite and companion volunteer program that matches up folks who are experiencing social isolation with volunteers that can provide connection and respite for those caregivers as well. We have a wing of our elder rights team that's dedicated to reframing aging and the ageism that's in our society. And so making sure that we are working through how to address that in everything that we do. We just received a grant recently for an abuse in later life initiative that's looking essentially at elder abuse and how we can help provide community response to that. So training is a large component of that. And then the best programs in our elder rights are the LGBTQ plus programs. They're the ones I coordinate. And I'll talk in a minute more specifically about what we offer in terms of that. Keeping us all together is our strategic planning and business results team that helps to make sure we are, compliant with our contracts. Even though we're a part of Boulder County government under the 3 county commissioners, we do have to do some private fundraising in order to do some programming that's not covered by the general funds. And so we have an aging services foundation that helps with that. Policy is an important aspect of the work that we do as well. And so our policy planning and advocacy person is in charge of all of our communications and making sure that we have presence at the Capitol. Our Aging Advisory Council is one of a couple of different volunteer boards that we have where we can involve the community in really helping provide input for our programs and services. I think I mentioned our veteran services officers before. And then finally, we can provide short-term assistance in the form of cash for folks who have various needs. And so when people are interested in any of our services, they should go through, as I mentioned before, our AAA resource line, which is our 1617 number. And you'll get a copy of these. I'm going to send a copy of these slides to Jen afterward, and hopefully we can get them out to you all, and you can have that information as well, which is in the slide. But it's our 303-441-1617 number, and that is the way that anyone that would need any AAA services or had any general questions could get a hold of us. I'm going to jump into the LGBTQ plus services and tell you about what I do. We've mentioned Project Visibility many times. Again, that's our training component. We heard from our Rainbow Elders almost, some over 20 years ago, like in 2000, early aughts, that they were worried, just like that statistic showed, about having to recloset themselves if they needed to seek out any senior care. And so we realized that was our opportunity to provide training, just as SAGE has done originally for assisted living and long-term care communities, now branching out to just about anyone who is a service provider for older adults, and really anyone interested in learning more about how to be more inclusive for LGBTQ plus older adults. They named themselves Rainbow Elders 22 years ago, and so that stuck, like I said, for a couple of decades. And so pretty impressive there that we have that branding that stays with us. As part of our Project Visibility, we also have a documentary that you won't be able to get a chance to see today because I've chosen some other videos for us to watch. And one of the reasons is because we are in the process right now of creating a new remake of that video. We did the original one in 2004. A remake was done in 2008, excuse me. And a lot has changed since 2008. And so we're really happy that thanks to a grant from the Next 50 initiative and the hiring of Pixel Mill Studios, a local Boulder company, in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Association, we are currently working on a new version, a new draft of our Project Visibility film. So we are in the process of interviewing Rainbow Elders about their life and their life experiences and what it's been like for them in terms of seeking out healthcare, mental health care, just dealing with the public in terms of gender affirming care. So we're really excited about that. We have a monthly newsletter that tells everybody about everything that's going on. We have Facebook pages for both Rainbow Elders of Boulder County and Project Visibility, so feel free to check those out and follow us on there. I try to put up a post every day to keep people informed about what's going on and about other important issues. So another way to stay on top of what we're doing. We are meeting in 2022 once a month for a social gathering. We're rotating between a virtual and an in-person gathering. And so virtual tea time is taking place on the odd months, whereas we're doing in-person supper club on the even months. And so folks have been really excited to be able to have an opportunity to get back into doing some more things. And so we're excited about that. Our biggest event that we put on every year is our Lavender Gala. And the last couple of years, we've had to do virtual events due to the pandemic. We're really excited that this year in 2022 in December, Sunday, December 4th, we are returning back in person to Nice's in Lafayette. Nice's moved locations, but same management. And so we're excited to be able to, this is the old location here. And we're excited to have Mrs. Ida Bagel, a gender illusion technician, and DJ Susie Pringle. Both have committed to that return, that resurfacing back to in-person. So we're really excited and looking forward to a great event there. In terms of resurfacing, last month was Pride Month. And so we've been really excited to have events in person. The last couple of years, instead of doing in-person events, we were doing motorcades. Here's a picture of myself and my partner when we decorated my car to be in the motorcade. This year, we were able to return in person and do our 50+ mixer at the new Out Boulder County building. Out Boulder County, who is really the premier LGBTQ group for Boulder County, has a new building that it's off the diagonal, in North Boulder, a beautiful building, 3 levels, all dedicated to community space. And so really great to be able to have the 50+ mixer, which is where that first picture is. And then here we are at Boulder Pride. Both Longmont and Boulder Pride took place in one weekend in June. And here's our brand new tent that we just got this year. So excited about the branding and making sure that you know who we are, and our new spinning wheel. And so it was a great time this year, as I've been saying, resurfacing back into the community and seeing people again. And I know folks were happy about that opportunity as well. We started a writing group for Rainbow Elders, so for LGBTQ+, 50+ folks, which has been a great success. Our MSW intern has been able to run that the last couple of years, and we look forward to doing that in the spring as well. Finally, the very last thing I want to talk about in our programs is our Rainbow Connections volunteer program. And so all of the stuff that I previously mentioned really requires people to be resourced enough and mobile enough to be able to attend, in person. And so we realized we have some vulnerable people out there that are experiencing even more social isolation. And so we have a Rainbow Connections volunteer program that matches up LGBTQ+ or strong allied volunteers with LGBTQ+ folks in the community who are experiencing social isolation. So those are our programs. I'm always so excited to be able to share with people about all the great work that we do. And as you can tell, I love my job and all that we offer. And so I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment there so I can go back to seeing people. I was getting a couple of notifications during, and so I hope I came through clearly throughout all of that. Threw me off for a moment there when I thought I wasn't even with you all. I thought, oh, I'm not even in a Zoom meeting right now. Anyway, to get us thinking about our next segment here, in terms of pronouns and pronoun usage, we're going to watch another short video that's going to introduce the concept of gender identity and pronoun usage to us so that we can then think about spending a little bit of time introducing ourselves using our pronouns. And so without further ado, I am going to maybe turn on our next video.
We asked some people in our community a simple question. What will you teach the world? Here's Tristan from the Pride Center of Edmonton.
I'd like to teach people about gender identity and how to use pronouns correctly. First off, let's talk about the difference between sex and gender identity. Sex is something that is assigned at birth. When the medical professional says, "It's a boy," or "It's a girl," they are basing this off of your physical anatomy, or your sex. Gender identity is a person's experience of their own gender. Most people's gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. The term for this is cisgender, from the Latin cis, meaning on this side of. Someone who is transgender, or gender non-binary, however, has a gender identity that does not align with the sex they were assigned at birth. Transgender and non-binary people can experience their gender in a variety of ways. Some transgender people may identify strongly with a gender. Some may feel disconnected from masculine and feminine genders, while others may experience their gender as a combination of both. Here's a quick refresher on grammar. Pronouns are words we use to refer to someone in place of a name. Some are tied to a specific gender, like he, him, his, and she, her, hers. Others, like they, them, theirs, are gender neutral. Some transgender people will use gendered pronouns as they affirm their gender identity. However, some transgender and gender non-binary folks will use gender-neutral pronouns. It's important to consider that the pronouns that feel comfortable for one person might not be for another. Okay, so why is this important? You probably have an expectation about what pronouns people refer to you by, and so do most transgender or gender non-binary people. Using someone's pronouns correctly is important because pronouns correspond with a person's gender. When pronouns are used incorrectly, we may risk misgendering them. Misgendering is when someone uses the wrong name or pronoun to describe someone else. This can cause distress for the person who is misgendered because they may feel that their gender identity is not validated and respected. Misgendering can also create a risk to someone's safety by outing that person to others. Unfortunately, some people purposely misgender others to insult them. Using the correct name and pronoun is about showing basic respect. If you're not sure, you can just ask. A great way to ask someone's pronoun when you first meet them is to say your name, state your pronouns, then ask the person you are meeting with what their name and pronouns are. Hi, my name is Tristan. I use he, him, his pronouns. What is your name and pronouns? Hi, my name is Jordan, and I use they, them, theirs pronouns. Thank you for asking. Once you know someone's pronouns, you will know how to refer to them when speaking to others. Hey everyone, this is Jordan. They're a new friend of mine. We all make mistakes though. If you slip up, apologize, and try to avoid being defensive. Hey everyone, this is Jordan. He's a new friend of mine. They're a new friend of mine. Sorry, Jordan. No worries, thanks. Getting someone's gender right is on you, not the transgender or non-binary person. Try not to make assumptions about someone's gender identity. You don't know someone's pronouns until they tell you. Pronouns are something important that most people don't think about. However, pronouns are extra important to many transgender and non-binary folks as it affirms their gender identity. Using someone's correct pronouns is important and validating. It's easy to get it right if you avoid making assumptions. In the end, this all comes down to treating each other with a little care and respect.
Again, the theme of care and respect and being able to treat people in a nice manner. And so important in terms of thinking about that. What I want to do now is invite you to, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do this in the chat, or if you'd like, you can do it out loud. I would like you to introduce yourself by providing your name, the pronouns that you use, and your goal for attending today, or your reason for attending today. So I will start out to show you all how to do it. I think I did this at the beginning as well, but my name is Michael Chifolo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the LGBTQ+ program specialist at the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging, and I'm here today to help everyone be nice. So who would like to, we can do a few out loud and then also encourage to do it in the chat as well.
Hi, my name is Dave Sampson. I'm the Director of Fund Development for True Community Care. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my hope today is to do some self-learning for my own edification, and also to find ways to add to the culture established at True, so that we can continue to be an open organization to people who need our services.
Great, thank you so much, Dave, appreciate that.
My name is Erin. I go by she, her, hers. Strong ally here, and have recently had a family experience on service where it was a lesbian couple, and they had a very disappointing and sad history within the medical community. So this presentation, it struck home for me. It meant a lot. And I'm really happy to see you doing what you're doing, and thank you.
Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Natalie Gov. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a social worker with the PACE program, and my goal today is just to learn more about how to advocate for my participants and make them feel safe enough for them to be themselves and also to learn more about resources for the LGBTQ plus community in Boulder County.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Appreciate that. Thank you for the ones that are coming into the chat. Appreciate that as well. Who would like to go next? Out loud, live and out loud.
I can. I'm Sue Samuels. Excuse me. I'm one of the volunteers, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I really wanted to solidify how I treat all people, make sure that I'm in the right place for them.
Great. Glad you're here today, Sue.
My name is Jean Dempsey. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And thank you, Michael. I think I want to be a nice, respectable person. And so I always take advantage of whatever information and training is out there. I'm a volunteer for True.
Thank you, Jean. Appreciate that.
I'm Tyler Hamilton. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am a care coordinator for the True Palliative Program. And I am here, so I've gone through Train the Trainer for Project Visibility, and I'm just here kind of as a extra refresher. So.
I think I definitely remember you from before, Tyler.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Anyone else want to introduce themselves out loud? Again, I appreciate everyone doing it in the chat. Just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. All right, then we will move on to the next segment. In terms of thinking about the breadth of experience that our LGBTQ plus older adults have as life experiences, I think it's important to consider history and thinking about the differential impact of various things that have occurred in history. And so we're going to watch another video. It's our third and final video for today. But this is about aging as LGBTQ plus. And what it does is it compares two stories of a heterosexual cisgender woman and of a lesbian couple, and how that looks different for folks throughout time. And so I am going to share this video.
As the American public ages, so do lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. LGBT older adults face the same challenges as other older adults, including financial worries and health concerns. But LGBT older adults face additional challenges. Let's compare two women, Tina and Jackie, who were both born in 1947. In 1967 at college, Tina meets Frank, and Jackie meets Francis. On a date with Francis after work, Jackie is seen by a coworker who tells their boss. Jackie is legally fired and takes a lesser-paying job at a factory. In 1973, Tina marries Frank, but Jackie is unable to marry Francis. In the 80s, Tina and Frank have children, but Jackie and Francis are barred from adopting. After decades of hard work, in 2010, Frank and Francis retire. Tina takes Social Security spousal benefits. But because the federal government didn't recognize same-sex marriages then, Jackie is denied those benefits. In 2015, right before the freedom to marry becomes available nationwide, Frank and Francis die. Tina pays for her in-home care with her Social Security survivor benefits and funds from Frank's pension. Jackie is denied Social Security survivor benefits, and because she was not a legal spouse, is also denied Francis's pension. Their apartment was rented in Francis's name, and her state lacks non-discrimination protections in housing, so Jackie is evicted when she tries to change the lease into her name. Lacking an income and a place to live, Jackie moves into a nursing home and relies on Medicaid to pay for it. She fears discrimination if she shares stories about her past, so she doesn't talk about her life with Francis. Tina can afford in-home nursing care and has the support of her children. After a lifetime of discrimination, LGBT older adults face economic insecurity, poorer health, and reduced support networks.
I'm going to pause it there and just leave the screen up for a moment so that we can reflect on the disparities that are shown through this video. So LGBTQ plus folks experience more economic insecurity, poorer health, and reduced support networks, all that impact whether folks end up accessing health and mental health care services. So all concerns for us in terms of thinking about these disparities. I'm going to stop sharing here and pull up the screen here to talk about the chronology a little bit more in detail. The video does a great job of showing those disparities as they exist for folks, but now let's think about also the policies that were going on at that time and how those had an impact on folks. So pull this up. Okay, so again, this goes along with the video, and that was put out by MAP, the Movement Advancement Project, and they are a wonderful social justice organization that does data collection as well as advocacy for many intersectional identities, and is in here in Boulder. So great to know about them. As you can see, some of these things were mentioned throughout, but the light gray things are the overall policies that were occurring, and so how that may or may not have impacted folks. And so you heard about one being fired for being LGBT. That was the lavender scare piece, and when in the 50s, and so that affected people for real. In 1969, we can see that the Stonewall riots occurred. That's looked at as really the beginning of the modern LGBTQ plus movement, and it's important in terms of thinking about what that looked like and who was involved in that. Our trans women of color were some of the very important people. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera both were there for the riots during that time, and then also were really key in starting the movement out after that. And so important to note that our trans women of color were at the forefront of all of that. In 1973, the DSM finally removes homosexuality as a diagnosable disorder out of their manual. In 1981, the AIDS crisis begins and impacts, and in fact decimates communities of LGBTQ folks all over, and so had a definite impact on people's livelihood. And those folks, many folks who are alive today, went through that, lived through that. Many could be living with HIV today, and others saw their close family and friends die. And so important for us to recognize the impact of that as well. In continuing on, in 1993, Bill Clinton, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, shifted things in the military. A lot started happening here in terms of policy with the Defense of Marriage Act. And then a whole bunch of states started taking this on as a state issue, and between civil unions and same-sex marriages, there was a lot of difference going on in different places in terms of what was allowed, what was disallowed. And so it was really great finally when first in 2013, the Defense of Marriage Act was overturned. And then in 2015, when the US Supreme Court ruled that marriage equality was legal and that there was nothing that could allow people to deny that. And so that really shifted and changed the environment for folks. And it's important to note that marriage equality was definitely an accomplishment, but there's lots of stuff still to be done. And in fact, in 30 or so states right now, you can still be fired for being LGBTQ+. You don't have rights and public accommodations. And so we're at a scary juncture in time right now too, where I think that the future might hold removal of more of these rights and freedoms that we've had. And so it's really important for people to stay on top of that and get involved at every level that you can in order to keep those things still going. that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't want to stay in there for too long. One thing I want to correct from the video that we're happy to say is that they talked about Social Security, death benefits, survivor benefits. And at the time of that video, those were not allowed for same-sex couples. Very pleased to announce that that changed. And so folks who are in same-sex marriages can also receive those benefits. And so that was a good change in the right direction. I'm going to stop just for a moment to see if we have any questions. Before I allow everyone to have a short break. I think that we should take a 5-minute break to go off screen, mute yourselves, and go do whatever you need to do. It gives me a moment to stop talking. Do what you need to do and be back at 1:20, and we will continue on with the last portion. Thank you all. Enjoy your break. Hopefully folks enjoyed getting a moment to themselves. We are going to spend the next segment of our time together talking about, and I want to recognize that people come with various levels of understanding about this. So for some people, this may be review. For others, it may be a new way to be thinking about things. And so what we want to really make sure that we have an understanding of is that there are two separate concepts under the acronym LGBTQ+, that are interrelated but distinct from one another. And that is that of gender identity and then that of sexual orientation. And so in order to help illustrate this, we have a graphic called the gender tree that I'm going to share now. And we're going to talk about the concepts that are related here to the gender tree. So, all right, hopefully everyone can see that. We're going to start out at the bottom with the roots of the tree. So the roots of the tree represent your assignment at birth, so your sex assigned at birth. And the video mentioned this, and most of the time those roots, that sex assigned at birth, is generally labeled male or female, and it's based upon genitalia. Where this becomes tricky is for folks who are born intersex, folks who are born with both male and female characteristics. And so what's scary about the way that our society is that many times we are so fearful of things not fitting into that distinct gender binary of male and female, that many times intersex babies, without even consulting the parents, doctors decide to perform gender reassignment surgery, forcing the child into either male or female, depending on what the dominant characteristics are. And many folks have shared stories later of how that didn't work for them. And when we think about the idea of allowing diversity to exist, it's pretty frightening that, you know, we must have things fit into this dichotomous binary, so much so that we make decisions for people before they have the opportunity to make them for themselves. So that's information about your sex assigned at birth. Your sex assigned at birth doesn't just occur. It, you know, is impacted by the soil, so the societal influence. So we're surrounded by social, cultural, and institutional influences. So as we learn and grow as a gendered individual, we are constantly given different messages and feedback about ranges of accepted practices, appearances, and behaviors. And so the soil impacts those roots. As we move on up the tree through the trunk, that represents our gender identity. And so that's an individual's deeply felt sense of gender that may include man, woman, genderqueer, agender, and other endless possibilities and combinations. So a person's gender identity may or may not align with others' perceptions of their gender. And the only way to know a person's gender identity is to ask them. So I think the video did a good job of showing us, you know, how to create environments where we can offer that information, so it will allow folks to feel encouraged to do that as well. In the different iterations of this graphic, one of the pieces that's been added recently is our fluidity and our history. And so those are the rings of the trunk. And so that represents that all aspects of our holistic identity, our gender expression, our gender identity, our sexual orientation, relationship orientation, which we're going to get to in a minute, and all other identities can and do change over time and in different situations. So it's interesting for us to be able to think about how that fluidity and that history of who we've been impacts who we are. Your gender expression are the leaves that we all see, and so that's what the tree bears. And so this is a person's outward presentation of gender through a combination of dress, demeanor, social behavior, speech patterns, mannerisms, interactions, and other factors. And so gender expression can vary for an individual from day to day or in different situations, and most people have a range of expressions that feels most comfortable and are safe for them. And so I always joke and mention here, especially in person, I always say, in terms of speech patterns and mannerisms, I am both Italian and gay, and so my hands are constantly moving as I'm talking, and I know you definitely see that in person and probably can still see it virtually as well. But those are some of those different ways of how we express our gender. Now, moving on to the other side and up above the tree is a constellation that provides light in the night for the tree, but is separate. And so that recognizes the difference between our sexual orientation and our sexual identity. And so these are our environmental attractions. So a person's self-identity related to who they are attracted to emotionally, romantically, and sexually. And so these identities may include lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, queer, questioning, heterosexual, straight, asexual, unlabeled, and a whole bunch of other terms that are not listed here. After this slide, we'll talk about the acronym and about different components in there. And so there might be some of those identities that you're unfamiliar with. We'll have an opportunity to talk about those in a minute. And then again, thinking about the evolution of this and something that was added later is this idea of relationship orientation. And so we have different preferences for the way we engage with other people. So you have people who are extroverted, people who are introverted, people who like small groups, people that like medium-sized groups, people that love large crowds, people who like public speaking, others who don't like it so much. We can interact as individuals, as couples, as networks. There are folks who are polyamorous, people who are monogamous, people who share friends with benefits, sexual relationships, non-sexual relationships, and many more. And so it's important to think about that relationship orientation impacting the way we interact with other people too. And so I really appreciate the evolution of this graphic. And so that's the gender tree and the concepts of gender identity and sexual orientation all in one. We are going to move on to the next slide, which continues on with terminology. And I mentioned that we were going to look at the acronym and think about the acronym for a moment. You probably have seen different versions of the acronym, and I didn't want to overwhelm you here, but what I did was pull all the different elements that I've seen in different versions of the acronym and pull it together in one so that we can become familiar with the baseline. And again, could be review for many of you, and for others, this might be brand new. And so we want to think about it in a way that's inclusive for all people. So what I would like you to do, if you wouldn't mind, and it may sound a bit cacophonous while we're going through this, but I would like you to unmute, because I find that the best way to get used to using these words is to say them out loud. And so we're going to go through the acronym together, and I want to hear lots of voices. Tell me what the L stands for.
Lesbian.
Lesbian.
Great. And the G?
Gay.
Good. How about the B?
Bisexual.
Bisexual.
Awesome. How about the T?
Trans.
Great.
Transgender.
Yes, transgender. Yeah. Okay, we've got two Qs here. So what might be one of those Qs?
Queer.
Queer.
Queer. And we're going to talk about that word in a minute because there's some controversy about that in some places. What's the second Q for?
Questioning.
Awesome. Questioning as well. Good. Okay, what about the I?
Intersex.
Intersex. Awesome. How about the P?
Pansexual.
Okay, this is the point in the training where often some people say, hey, I'm not sure what pansexual is. So I want to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to share their understanding of pansexuality.
I can. This is Natalie.
Great. Thank you, Natalie.
You wanted me to turn on my video when I talk. There. So my understanding of pansexuality is that you are attracted to the person It doesn't matter how that person identifies. You're attracted to the person. They could be gay, lesbian, intersex, transgender, bi, any and all of those, but you're still attracted to the. It's like David said in Schitt's Creek. It's more about the label, or it's more about the wine, not the label.
Yes, yes. I love that you brought Schitt's Creek into it because that's what a great
I love
example
that show.
of a way that to explain that. But yeah, so pan meaning all, and again, great definition there, Natalie. Some folks look at pansexuality maybe as the evolution of bisexuality. So whereas when we used bisexual as a term to say I could be attracted to either men or women, that pansexuality recognizes that there's more than just men and women and that I could be attracted to anybody. And so yes, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Okay, we've got 3 A's here, and it's not the AAA, the Area Agency on Aging, but 3 different things that we could use as A's here. What might be one of those?
Asexual.
Asexual.
Asexual, great. That's the first A. So again, we anchor a lot of this in, sexuality, but there are folks who really don't identify that way, and they are included as well. And so if we're thinking about asexuality for sexual orientation, what's another term maybe that could be similar to that, but for gender? Another A.
Agender.
Agender, there you go, awesome. And the third A, there's a little bit of controversy about whether this A should be included or not in the acronym. And what do we think that might be?
Ally.
Allies, yes, great. So the controversy about allies is that some folks say, okay, first of all, do we know what an ally is?
A supporter.
Yeah, so someone who doesn't identify as LGBTQ+, but considers themselves an ally, a supporter, a friend, an advocate for. And so since they don't have a queer identity, the argument is that they shouldn't really be a part of the acronym. I think there are many more voices that err on the side of inclusion and think that, wow, we'd be nowhere without our allies. And some allies who've been strong allies and on the front out there with their queer identified friends are experiencing many of the same things. And so I want to bring them in and include the allies in there as well. What about the 2S?
Two-spirit.
Two-spirit.
Yeah, Two-spirit. This group is great. So Two-spirit, does someone want to try and explain what that is?
It comes from Native American culture, or the Berdache, where they believed that homosexual people kind of were of the male and the female spirit. So they actually shared the spirit of both. So that's kind of my
yeah. Yeah, great definition there. And we're revered in many tribes. So I think that's really great in terms of thinking about that. And the only place where there's race, ethnicity referred to in the acronym. So I think it's important for us to kind of think about, that some other cultures might not use this exact terminology and that the acronym may not be as inclusive as it can be. And I think that's what the plus is at the end, is to say that, there are other identities that belong here that are included in that plus. And so just to be thinking about that. Queer, I mentioned earlier, I think that there's some mixed reactions to that term, especially with older adults. We did a survey within our Rainbow Elders a few years ago to ask if folks wanted to add the Q+ onto the narrative and the verbiage that we were using. And 2/3 of the people who were sampled did say yes, that it would be more inclusive to add the Q+. We did have some folks who still have painful and traumatic histories with that term, and so not embraced fully 100% across the board, but definitely shifting and changing. And as I mentioned, the whiteness of the acronym earlier, I think it's important for us to be thinking about intersectionality and all the different ways that we have identity. And that, this presentation is focused heavily on gender identity and sexual orientation, but, there are other aspects of our holistic experience that impact who we are: our race, ethnicity, our age, class, gender, sexual orientation, our abilities, religion, the languages we speak, our nationalities, our geography, political affiliation, all kinds of different things that play into who we are. And so to make sure that we're thinking about all of those different intersections of our identities. Going on with different types of discrimination and stigma, homophobia can appear both in externalized and internalized forms. Homophobia being the discomfort, dislike, or extreme hate of those folks who identify as non-heterosexual. Its sister in discrimination and stigma is heterosexism and heterosexual privilege. Heterosexism being the assumption that everybody is straight or should be straight, and that heterosexual privilege representing the way those folks are privileged in everyday life. Transphobia, again, the discomfort, dislike, or extreme hate of those folks who are not cisgender, those folks who are transgender or non-binary. And what's really dangerous about transphobia is that its ultimate can end up in death. And so it's very sad for trans folks, trans women, and more specifically, trans women of color, and even more specifically, Black trans women are killed at disproportionate rates. In fact, in the community, you are considered an elder if you make it to the age of 35, because your life expectancy is so much shorter than everyone else around you. So that should matter to us as service providers and people who care. Cisgender privilege is the privilege of, that cisgender folks face every day. And to me, I can think of that occurring most easily when we look at bathrooms and what's there for folks. So that's discrimination and stigma. All of those things have effects. They socially isolate people. They create depression and anxiety, which leads to poor health and nutrition. Sometimes coping mechanisms can be used as, substance use, neglect. All of this leads to a greater need for care, but more of a reluctance to access that care because of the homophobia and transphobia. And this can all lead to premature death. And so this is important for us to be thinking about how we can involve ourselves in maybe flipping some of this disparity. How can we make a difference in how folks live? I know the last few slides we've been talking about a lot of things that are negative, and so I think it's important for us to think about that our LGBTQ plus older adults all have strengths, even though we have to compartmentalize and put ideas into a container to learn about them. We want to recognize that each and every one of our folks has an individual history, and that it's important for us to be able to ask questions that can create environments where people can feel encouraged to share these individual histories. Many folks have been ostracized and alienated from their families of origin, and so our folks have had to create families of choice, and so that innovation is really something that we should be tapping into as a strength as well. And just in general, strength itself, resilience, and the coping skills that are used to maneuver this world as an LGBTQ plus person is a strength in itself, and so something that we should recognize in our people. So to kind of summarize, when we're thinking about what it is that we need to do, how do we need to approach this? LGBTQ plus older adults need the same thing that all older adults need. They need safe and welcoming communities. They need knowledgeable and caring staff and service providers, and they need dignified and respectful treatment. I think the only difference that I would add is that you want to do all of this with a bit of a rainbow flare, if you will. I think that it's important for people to treat everyone with respect, but I think it's also important for us to notice and validate difference that exists. And so when someone shares something with you about who they are, that you thank them for doing that, and that you encourage them to share more. It's definitely not our responsibility to get on the loudspeaker and share whatever we find out, but we can always encourage people to share with other people. So if they're in a community and say, hey, it would be really helpful for your social worker to know about this too. If you feel comfortable, why don't you tell Michael about who you are? And so I think that there's ways that we can encourage that. So again, we want to do the same thing that we're doing with all older adults, with just a little bit of rainbow flair, if you will. We are going to move into promising practices and things that we can actually do in order to create inclusive communities for LGBTQ plus older adults. Again, we want to listen carefully. We want to ask appropriate questions. The questions that we use in everything, in our daily interaction, plus on our forms, are often very limited in the way that they're close-ended. And we want to think about ways of opening up those questions so that we can include more diverse responses. So we can encourage people to share who they are and be their authentic selves. Again, respecting individuality and difference, and then maintaining confidentiality. As I mentioned earlier, we don't want to get on the loudspeaker and share, hey, Michael just came out. But we do want to encourage them to share with others as they see fit. So those are some promising practices. Kind of going on, thinking about some of these a little bit more. Most of the time, our forms probably need a little bit of readjustment in terms of becoming a little more inclusive. Yes, we all have funding sources and reporting requirements that ask for us to do things in a certain way, but there's usually some wiggle room in terms of being able to be a little more inclusive. And so we want to think about that. And it takes time to think about that. It's not just one time that you look at a form and then it's perfect. It takes iterations of having different people look at that and see what would make the most sense. I'm going to send some information to Jen that hopefully she can get out to you all afterward with the slides, but it will have our manual as well. And so there's a whole chapter in there that talks about forms and has examples of inclusive ways to shift things around. That may include as well using gender neutral language. And so opening it up so that we're not making assumptions in the questions that we're asking and using it in a way that's gender neutral. People want to see themselves places. So if you can have LGBTQ plus materials in common areas, do an inventory of what images are in your spaces. I bet that they only represent certain segments, and maybe we all could be a little more inclusive. And so, having an LGBTQ magazine or, flag or other signage that can show that inclusion to people is very important. So you not only want to have a non-discrimination policy, you want to train your staff about that, make sure that they're using it, and then post it for people to see. So to make sure that they can see all the elements that are included in that non-discrimination policy. You may not be able to see it behind me, but my inclusive space sign with the upside down pink triangle is up there. And in fact, I believe it's in the slides. I'm like, oh, strain your eyes to see it behind me when I bet it's next. Look at that. So this is also in that manual. And this is a way too for folks to see right at the beginning, have this on your front door, have it in the window at the beginning. It doesn't have to be this. There are other "you are welcome here" types of signs, rainbow flags, any ways that you can show folks that, hey, this is a welcoming environment and you can be your authentic self here. It's important to people. People are looking for those things and it does matter to them. And the forms matter too. When folks are filling out the forms, I always have to share a personal experience about my primary care doctor, whose forms were very inclusive and asked about gender identity and sexual orientation. And oh my gosh, I was answering questions in the margins. I was flipping things over on the back to add additional things. And sometimes I even have to be sent away from my doctor because I'm so connected to her now. And that all came from the beginning of it, knowing that it was okay to be myself and to have, my identity out in the open. I think that was really important to get better care. And so as you heard in that very first video, some folks are saying that they've never even been asked about their sexual behavior. And so that's problematic if your primary care physician doesn't have a clue about that. Today, we had an hour and a half together and we've gone pretty in depth. For other folks who maybe need a refresher or just thinking about this topic initially, our Project Visibility online training, we have a 30-minute start and stop asynchronous training that's great for folks and can be found at www.projectvisibility.org. And so that's a great opportunity for people to begin this education. I am going to propose this question, give you a moment to think about what you can actually do from what have you learned today that you can shift and change in your everyday life. What can you do to help support LGBTQ plus older adults? So I'm going to stop sharing there so I can see your faces again.
I'll jump in, Michael.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, this has been great, and my mind's been spinning a lot ever since we started. And I probably have more questions than answers, and will rely on my colleagues who have been at True longer than I to maybe we have some of these things in place. But I'm thinking of perhaps aligning our bereavement support or grief support services with Outboulder or with the AAA to see if there are ways that we can have loss-specific grief groups for the LGBTQ community. I love the idea of the symbolism within our workplace and in our printed materials to demonstrate that we are sensitive and knowledgeable, and I don't know what the right word is, for inclusivity, for providing care for terminally ill patients and their families and those who love and care for them. And so I think that there might be room to do an assessment to see what we currently have and to have more training. I love that there are so many volunteers that are participating on this call today. So thank you to all of you who are volunteers who are wanting to learn more as well. And then I guess I have a general question too. There are like signs on our email addresses that say we're Joint Commission accredited, and that might be important to people or payers or people who are looking to see if we've measured some certain standard, or that we are part of the Veterans Project. And so veterans that might look for special services or an alignment. But is there anything in the LGBTQ community or through the AAA that can showcase our efforts to be educated and to align this in our culture?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thank you, first of all, for all of the different things you're thinking about and ways that you can approach being more inclusive. I think one way, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I think there were some questions about this too, and we didn't really address it in terms of promising practices for pronoun usage, but including your pronouns on your email byline, I think is one of those ways that you can do that. And we've implemented that at the county, indicating our pronouns, and then also having a link next to it that explains to people what that's about, since some folks might not be familiar with including your pronouns. So I think that's probably a good first step in terms of kind of aligning and giving that message. And then it also seems to be something that a lot of people are doing. So
Michael, can I just ask a quick question about that? When you implemented it at the county, did you do it in a way that did you find that some people wanted to opt out or did not want to share, did not want to participate, and did you make it optional?
Yes, so absolutely. Thank you for reminding me to back up and share that it was totally optional to do that. But we did provide, a template if people did want to share it. And we went through, a few different committees, like, coming up with what would that look like, if you did share. And so kind of keeping it consistent for that branding purpose. But yeah, people could opt out of it for sure.
Okay, great. And I've been on some county meetings where the speakers kick things off by introducing themselves in that way, and it kind of sets the tone and makes it feel like a safe space.
Right, and so a couple other ways you can do that, as you see, some of us have them indicated on our nameplates here, like in Zoom, and so you can do that as well. You can add your pronouns on there, and then another way is to just include it as part of all meetings, so that you introduce your pronouns at the beginning of all meetings when you're introducing yourself. And we've implemented that through meetings as well as through interviews too. So any interviews that we're having with candidates for employment positions, we found that was important to do it there too. And again, I think I just want to mention really quickly, I didn't mean to cut you off too, that some of it, is new. And so it just takes some time to get used to it. And so I think sometimes we want to sit back and develop the perfect way to implement it before implementing it. And I would encourage you just to start trying to do things a little bit differently here or there, and fumble through some of it so that it's okay for us to kind of have some discussions about it. Sorry, Wendy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries. Sorry, the trash can just arrived. We put out a weekly newsletter. So any information that you could provide me that I could put in, I especially liked your promising practices. That would be helpful.
Yeah, so we can let's do a little blurb with like a summary of like promising practices, and then we can do a link to like the training.
That would be
And
awesome.
then you can include that.
Okay.
Let me write that down so I won't forget.
I'll remind you if you forget. No worries.
Great, thank you. But I think that's a great way to do it, just to summarize some of those promising practices. We can talk about, different ways to include that.
Incorporate. Thank you.
Yeah. So what other ways are we going to be more inclusive toward LGBTQ plus older adults? And also any other questions that you have too. I'm always interested to hear how, and sometimes things are small too. Sometimes people are like, hey, I'm not really sure what I want to do with this, but I want to have a conversation with a certain important person, about this, to share about what I learned. Or, oh, now I get why, my friend's kid is asking us to use they, them, their pronouns,
I think it would be important. So for the PACE program, we have an adult daycare program and every participant has a name badge. So I think it would be important for us to ask if they want their pronouns included. Just from experience from working at another PACE program where the social work team really advocated for this to be implemented, the rest of the staff needs to be educated on what pronouns are and why they are important. And so just having the training to all the staff, not just like a few of us, I think is very important so that we can implement it. And if there's backlash, we can say, well, this is why it's important, and just continue to bring in training and education.
Yeah. Well, what's really great is I do believe this is being recorded. And so you all will have this training to share with other people. Of course, you can always ask me back live and in person as well, but at least you'll have that for other people to be able to see.
Yeah. So I don't know if you were involved, Michael, if you were there at the time, but probably not because it was a different county. We had a lot of concerns about transgender participants using the restrooms. So, there was a participant that is gender fluid. Well, I don't know if they are still alive or not, but this participant was gender fluid and they identified on a given day as male or female, and we gave them a name card and they would flip it, and that day they were male or the other day they were female, however they chose to identify that day. But they presented as a male. And so a lot of the staff and a lot of the other participants did not appreciate them using the restroom for their assigned gender of the day. So I think having training and education around that aspect too is really important, because also a lot of the older adults in the community were not educated about how this person identified and what gender fluidity means.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate bringing up that example. And that fluidity piece, we talked about that a little bit in the rings of the trunk, right? So this idea that there aren't necessarily fixed identities. So people's gender identity may shift or change from day to day or even throughout the day. And so helping to educate folks about what that means and what that looks like. And geez, the bathroom issue, bathrooms have been a challenge for so long. And I hear like my architectural and my like city planning like friends in the background saying that, oh, it's about zoning and it needs to be like this. But if we just made all bathrooms private, one person gender neutral bathrooms, we would totally and completely solve this problem. Yes, right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, it's not that difficult, and many places have proven that it can be done, and that it's not a large uproar that occurs, because some people do feel uncomfortable with that. Again, hopefully there's individual stalls and trying to teach people that it's really okay. It can work out fine. When you go to a large event and they, even with many of the LGBT organizations throughout the state, but out Boulder County specifically, if they go to a building that has gender specific bathrooms, they will rename them as all gender bathrooms. And so then it creates a situation again. And guess what? People make it through it. People make it through it fine. And so just challenging some of those ways that we think about things. And again, the more exposure we have, the more opportunity we have to discuss and to learn, the more comfortable we'll all feel about that. But you're right, educating everybody, staff, clients, community is really important.
There's a mountaineering shop in Boulder called Neptune's, and it has 2 bathrooms, and it has half of the where it's a skirt, and then the other half is a pant leg, and then it says whatever.
Right.
So
I
just think that's really great.
Yeah, it's just saying that, humans can use this bathroom, right? I mean, we get way too caught up in trying to figure out all of that stuff, and like it just doesn't need to be decided, really. We can do it. We have about 5 minutes left, and I want to hear a couple more things of how people are going to become more inclusive, and or your questions as well.
Well, I'm going to tell Eric's son about this program, and it really enhances my desire to be non-judgmental.
Good. I did well then.
And I would just like to say, for the true community, I am an openly cisgendered gay man, and I am happy to answer any questions. Feel free to email me or call me if you ever have questions. I'm sure you can reach out to Michael as well, but I am happy to help answer any questions that might pop up, because you can't learn if you don't ask questions. So.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you, Tyler. And as Tyler mentioned before, Tyler's trained as one of our Train the Trainer people, so knows all about it. And yes, I am also open for that as well. My contact information will be with the slides. If you have questions, you're thinking about something and not sure how to approach it, I'm totally open to be able to. Email is probably the best way to communicate that way with me. But I'm here for you. I want to thank you all for spending the last 90 or so minutes with me here. Hopefully you were able to get something useful that can help you to create more inclusivity for other people. Again, you don't have to understand everything in order to be nice and kind and respectful. And I know this community can do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We'll be sure to share your slides and all the information and lots of follow-up actions on my mind.
Yes, I will send that to you today, Monday at the latest.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.